Hello, good morning everybody. We are the group number 8 formed by Aisea, Nerea, Olat and me, Ichazo, and we will talk about slavery and the Civil War.
Slavery has often been treated as a marginal aspect of history, confined to courses on Southern or African American history. In fact, slavery played a crucial role in the making of the modern world and the development of the United States. Although we may think slavery was something that just happened in America, we have to take into account and remind that this hard truth also took place in other places such as Africa. Beginning at least as early as 1502, European slave traders shipped approximately 11 to 16 million slaves to the Americas, including 500,000 to what is now the United States. In the decades before the Civil War, a third of the South's population labored as slaves. Slave sales frequently broke up slave families. Nevertheless, enslaved African Americans were able to sustain an autonomous culture and community beyond the direct control of their masters. Enslaved African Americans performed all kinds of work, but slavery mainly meant backbreaking field work. They grown cotton accounted for over half the value of all United States exports.
The triangle trade is a historical term indicating trade among three ports or regions. It followed the Atlantic Triangle route, from England to West African coast and finally to the American coast. By 1865, when the slave trade was banned in Britain and the USA, there were over 4 million black slaves in America. The first stage of the triangular trade involved taking manufactured goods from Europe to Africa: clothes, spirit, tobacco, beads, cowrie shells, metal goods, and guns. The guns were used to help expand empires and obtain more slaves, until they were finally used against European colonizers. These goods were exchanged from African slaves. The second stage of the triangular trade, the Middle Passage, involved shipping the slaves to the Americas. The third and final stage of the triangular trade involved the return to Europe with the produce from the slave labor plantations.
Middle Passage was a voyage of about 500 miles that took place from about 1518 to the mid-19th century, where enslaved Africans were forced to cross the Atlantic Ocean to get to New World, packed tightly onto ships. This took 3 or 4 months, and during this time, the slaves were mostly laid chained in rows on the floor of the hold or on the shelves that ran round the inside of the ship hulls. These shelves were under a meter high, and often the enslaved Africans could not sit up. The tour was hauled in grossly overcrowded sailing ships manned by crews mostly from Great Britain, Netherlands, Portugal, and France. The captain of each one had the total authority over those aboard, and they let atrocities and sexual abuses of the enslaved captives happened. Moreover, the unsanitary conditions were remarkable. The heat was intolerable and the oxygen levels were very low. Because of that, various diseases were widespread too. Historians estimated that between 15 and 25% of the African slaves born for the America died aboard slave ships.
The American Civil War was fought in the United States and it lasted from 1861 to 1865. Even from the independence, there were strong differences between North and South. On the one hand, the North was more populated as well as industrialized, and they were against slavery but in favor of preserving the Union. On the other hand, the South, having many black slaves working in the cotton fields, wanted to continue with slavery and to separate from the United States. In United States history, a free Negro or free black was the legal status in the geographic area of the United States of blacks who were not slaves. As a consequence of this situation, the American Civil War, also known as Second American Revolution, started, where over 600,000 people died either in battle or disease. As a result of this bloody and violent war, the Union was maintained and slavery was abolished in the United States.
Slave Songs of the United States was a collection of African American music consisting of 136 songs. Published in 1867, it was the first and most influential collection of spirituals to be published. The collectors of the songs were Northern abolitionists William Francis Allen, Lucy McKim Garrison, and Charles Picard Ware. It is a milestone not just in African American music but in modern folk history. It is also the first published collection of African American music of any kind. Go Down Moses is an American Negro spiritual. It describes events in the Old Testament of the Bible, in which God commands Moses to demand the release of the Israelites from bondage in Egypt.
Slave narratives comprise one of the most influential traditions in American literature, shaping the form and themes of some of the most celebrated and controversial writing, both in fiction and in autobiography, in the history of the United States.
Olaudah Equiano was born in present-day Nigeria in the 18th century. In his early years, he was kidnapped and he found himself on Africa's west coast, where he was sold to a European slave ship. He made a middle passage to go to the Barbados. Nevertheless, none of the buyers were interested in Equiano, so he finally settled in Virginia, where he was sold. During those years, he had the opportunity to travel as well as to learn to read and write in English. When he earned his own freedom in 1766 by intelligent trading and careful savings, he shared his life story, especially the brutal treatment he witnessed as a slave. In 1789, Equiano became one of the first Africans to publish a book, the book that helped in the creation of the Slave Trade Act 1807, which ended the transatlantic slave trade for Britain and its colonies.
12 Years a Slave. This film represents slavery very accurately by telling the true story of a black man who fights for survival and freedom. This free man was living in upstate New York in the pre-Civil War United States when he was abducted and sold into slavery. He spent 12 years in charge of a malevolent slave owner, facing cruelty and struggling to stay alive and retain his dignity. In the 12th year, he achieves to leave behind that terrible lifestyle thanks to a Canadian abolitionist.
This movie is a perfect determination of an African American family's life based on Hailey's family's history. The man of the family is abducted from his African village, then sold into slavery, and finally he is taken to America. There he marries a plantation cook and has a daughter who is eventually sold away from them. She has a son who becomes a legendary cockfighter, and thanks to him the family reaches freedom. Throughout the film, remarkable events of North America are shown, such as civil wars, slave uprisings, and emancipation.
Thank you everybody for watching our video. We hope you enjoyed, and goodbye!